Hello, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Amy and this is amie.marie.art. On today's episode, we're going to be working on week E. I'm going to skip the long boring intros today and just get straight into it. So let's go. Starting off with an elephant, an egg whisk, an eye mask with a human ear and an earring on an egg chair with an egg and 8-ball sitting on earth. That's a lot of things starting with E. Okay, you might notice it's going to look like I'm painting on my table, but I am using a clear bit of plastic as my palette because then I can just chuck it away when that's done. And I am protecting my table. I've got a bit of paper down just in case I go over the edge of it. I'm not going to put too much out just yet. I'm going to start with the earth underneath the elephant. And it's not a great area to do. A huge area is what I should say. On my palette, I have white, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, and Titan buff. To base coat the water on the earth, I'm mixing up a combination of these colours to get that swirly, misty effect. This, however, is proving more difficult than usual, and that's because the paints are drying super fast. It makes it 10 times harder to blend. So it's really hot here today in Australia, and my paints are drying super quick. So I'm going to use a little bit of drying retarder just on the palette to kind of help them stay wet for longer. And we'll see how that goes. It does not go well. I've just put like dobs of it on my palette. I put too much, but it doesn't matter. Yep, it definitely matters. And I just want a hint of black to tone down the blue a little bit. It's a bit too bright. That is such a better colour. Adding black to any colour will desaturate the colour and kind of dull down that brightness. So I had far too much retarder on my palette. I did know that, but I thought I could kind of just work with it anyway instead of wasting the paint. But I have had to waste it. I ended up washing the palette. I've put some fresh paint out without the retarder, and this is still got that sheen to it, so it's not completely dry, but I am going to leave it kind of wet so that I can blend a little bit easier. Let's try this again. I think it might be still a little bit too wet. Actually, it's not too bad over this side. I think it was just a little bit damp under the bite. I'm using a dry brush to kind of fluff out and blend those two wet layers together and give me a softer, less harsh edge. This is working so much better. The retarder's at the right tackiness, I guess you can say. It's tacky enough that it's holding the paint to the canvas, but still kind of wet enough that it's blending nice and easily. To do the Australian map, On my palette, I have yellow oxide, quinacridone burnt orange, burnt sienna, and chromium oxide green. I also still have the black and the white from earlier. Now that the Australia and the earth are all dry, I'm going to go over with some wispy clouds. To do the wispy clouds, I'm using a mix of watered down white and watered down Mars grey, and then I'm blending it out with a soft dry brush to get that fluffy effect. To get the halo effect around the earth, I've watered down some light blue. I then dipped the corner of a damp brush into this mix and floated it along the edge of the earth. I'm going to start base coating the elephant now. I think that'll be the next thing that I tackle, just because I'm going to do a lot of soft brush blending, and because of that it's going to go onto the chair. So the chair being a more solid color, then yeah, I'll do that after the elephant. The colors I'm using for the elephant are Mars grey, black, white, Van Dyke brown, red sienna, and burnt umber light. We tend to think of elephants as being just plain grey, but if we look closely, they have quite a bit of brown tones to their skin as well. Note to self, be careful where you're putting your arm when the paint is still wet. With the main base coating or first layer done, it's now time to map out a few more details, a few lighter areas, a few more brown tones, and also to start marking out where some of those creases and wrinkles will lie. And with this second coat now done, it's time for the third layer. And I'm going to start the third layer on the ear. The ear is something that I really thought that I would struggle with because it's not my forte. But I actually found the process of doing this ear quite easy. I mean, there were adjustments that I made, slight changes to the perspective, but overall, it was a non-stressful experience. And with the ear all finished, it's now time to move on to the details on the face, starting with the wrinkles around the eyes. And it was about here that I realised I had the proportions wrong for where the tusks come out. I used some watered down white to map out where the tusk would be and where the skin folding around the tusk would lie. Taking a couple of minutes out to readjust these lines made doing the face so much easier. And with that marked out properly, I can now move forward with the wrinkles. Doing the wrinkles on the elephant was very time consuming. I must have spent hours on the elephant all up. But at the same time, doing repetitive small marks was so therapeutic. And I did find myself getting lost in the process, which is always a good thing. Now that I've finished the wrinkles, I'm moving on to the toenails on each of the feet and to the ivy tusks. During the process of doing the skin, I lost a few of the sharp lines on the toenails. So I'm going back in with a watered down white just to draw out and block in those shapes. I then base coated the tusks and the toenails again in a solid white. But these ended up being a bit too bright, so I then base coated again with the Titan Buff. While that paint was still wet, I went in with some raw sienna to mark out a few lines and cracks within the ivy tusks. I then added some more highlights back in and some burnt umber for the shadows. Back to the toenails that also get a coat of the Titan Buff. Then using the raw sienna to add in those crack details. I mixed in some black to the raw sienna for those deepest shadows. Then it's time to do the same with the toenails on the hands. A few highlights and the toenails are done. And time for the eye. I normally get really excited about doing eyes, but the elephant's eyes are so tiny and don't really hold much detail. I'm now going to start on the egg chair. I'm going to be adding Pyrrole Red and Quinacridone Magenta to my palette. Yep, I better move that wet paint palette before I stick my arm in it again. I'm base coating the egg chair in the Pyrrole Red, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but oh well. For the softer shadows, I'm using the Quinacridone Magenta mixed with a bit of the burnt umber from earlier. And then for the darker shadows, I'm using the same mix but with a bit more burnt umber and the tiniest amount of black. And I'm cleaning up the edges with a straight Pyrrole Red. To paint the stand on the chair, I'm using a combination of Mars Grey, black and white. And then it's time to finish off the painting with those few items remaining. The 8-ball, the egg whisk, the eye mask, the egg, and of course the earrings. And she's done. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget that notification bell. That way, you'll be notified every time I upload a video. Speaking of uploading videos, next week is the Alphabet Superset Challenge week off, all rest week. So there won't be letter F next week. It will be the following week. However, I do have a video installed for next week. It's not painting related, or I should say it's painting related, but there are no paints involved. With that being said, that is it for today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.